The Supreme Court, we know, is set to hear arguments over President Trump's executive order that ends birthright citizenship. The move sets the stage for a decision by the summer on 3 separate injunctions blocking the administration from creating a new standard for citizenship. So let's talk about this. Let's bring in senior national correspondent and ABC News Live anchor Terry Moran and ABC News legal contributor Kim Whaley for more. Kim, we'll start with you because are you really surprised that the Supreme Court agreed to hear this case? And if so, what does that tell you?
Well, I'm not surprised given how important it is in terms of the political landscape right now and the fears people have around the trajectory of the government. That being said, the 14th Amendment is pretty clear. And the Supreme Court in the late 19th century already rejected the Trump administration's argument that there's a loophole in birthright citizenship. So one might say there really isn't anything for the Supreme Court to resolve. Now, there's a sort of a side question on this issue of nationwide injunctions. So it's possible the court's just going to rule on whether a federal judge in a trial level can make a ruling that impacts the whole country. But I would argue this isn't really the vehicle for that. My sense is if the court is taking a case like this, it's going to make some new law, which for someone who supports the plain language of the 14th Amendment is probably not the best news, potentially.
Well, Kim, the president says the case has been misunderstood. He argues that birthright citizenship is really about slavery and saying the amendment was signed right after the Civil War. What do you make of that argument?
Well, you know, this is a conservative-leaning court in theory, right? A 6-3 conservative court who purports to begin with the plain text of the Constitution. And the text of the Constitution clearly establishes that citizens who are people who are born in the United States get citizenship. And there, again, in a case called Wong Kim Ark, the Supreme Court was asked whether questions about the immigration status of parents make a difference for the child who's born in the United States. The Supreme Court rejected that argument many, many years ago. So I think this is the Trump administration not only going out on a limb, but really defying the plain language of the Constitution. And this isn't the only place that the Trump administration has done this. So I would hope the Supreme Court takes this opportunity to underscore with a big black Sharpie that the Constitution is the top law of the land and it's not optional unless the people come together to actually amend it, which requires supermajorities in the United States Congress and in the state legislatures across the country.
And Terry, I ask you this: what's at stake in this case? And have the justice given any indication on where they're leaning, where this might go here?
What's at stake, Morgan, is basically the meaning of our history, the meaning of the Civil War, and the way we've understood our country really since the founding and before. For the vast majority of this country, for the vast majority of people, judges, presidents, senators, everyone, being born on the territory of the United States, unless you were the child of a foreign diplomat or very minor exceptions, meant you were one of us. You were an American. This has been challenged on the fringes of legal movements. It's now right in the White House, and it's the policy of the administration, the government of the United States. The Supreme Court stands in the way. It couldn't be any bigger, really, and it is going to be a fight. Now, has the Supreme Court indicated which way they're going to go? Not necessarily. It hasn't come up in quite a long time. The controlling case in this is from the 1890s, involving a Chinese American born here, a challenge to his citizenship. He won. The court said, no, that's who we are. That was 1896. And so what happens here could be a little bit narrower because the government, the administration is trying to do something a little clever. All they're asking the Supreme Court at this moment for is to lift those nationwide injunctions so that the policy, the executive order, can take effect in a few states. Well, that would leave thousands of babies born in one place citizens and thousands and tens of thousands born elsewhere under the same circumstances not citizens. That's a recipe for chaos. The Supreme Court's going to have to clean this up and make a statement about who we are.
Absolutely, and we'll see what happens there. But Terry Moran and Kim Whaley, thank you for helping us understand the gravity of this case.